Welcome to Mysteries, Monsters, and Mayhem.
I'm Shannon Lawrence.
And I'm MB Partlow.
Quick content warning before we get started. This podcast may contain language and disturbing content, so enter at your own risk.
Hello!
Hola, hola.
We need different greetings.
No.
We never will have, but... or opening music.
Hallo, wie geht's? Hello, how are you? It's German.
Oh. How would I know that? I don't speak German.
You do now. Aloha.
I speak Medea. Hello!
Hello. That's the only language you speak, huh?
It's one of those.
I also speak profanity fluently.
Yeah, definitely. I speak a smattering of French.
I think it's funny. So I have a therapist, and I was at the therapist, and I really like him, and he's very down to earth, but he has this very quiet kind of aura about him and everything. And I try to be very careful because I know I cuss like a sailor, not cussing around people who I feel might be uncomfortable with it or whatever. So I don't think I've ever cussed going to therapy with him for years. And
oh my God.
Right?
If I get worked up, forget it.
Right. Well, I got worked up about some things that are happening this time. And I was like it was like shit or something. And then I was all, and so I'm talking to a friend who has the same therapist because she's the one who referred me. Mm-hmm. And she was like, don't fret, pet. I cuss every time I'm there. I got a text just saying that. It cracked me up. She was like, not only do I cuss, he cusses back at me sometimes. So it's like, and I'm like, he is a very good, I think he's a chameleon and he's whatever you need.
Yes. That is good.
Because I don't do therapy like other people. So it basically, he's like, what's going on? I'm like, oh no, it's fine. Everything's fine. I'll just tell you some of the things that happen. And then I lay it all out in a very straightforward way. And I don't get emotional. And then he confirms for me that, wow, that's a lot. You're doing very well. And that's our therapy relationship. I pour everything out. He confirms, wow, that's some crazy shit right there. Mm-hmm. You should be depressed. And then we're good. And we do that every 3 months.
I had dinner the other night with two friends, and it just happened they'd both had therapy that day. So I said to one, how was your appointment? It sucked. Said to the other one, and how was therapy for you? It was terrible. And then I found out, but it wasn't a bad session. It just was heavy.
Okay.
And I found out they both treat themselves to ice cream afterward.
No, that makes sense. I considered it.
Because one had said, and I'm trying not to out anyone, had said they wouldn't go if in their head it wasn't linked to a treat afterward.
Huh. I would think that therapy would be the treat in itself, but maybe not. I'm just saying, I feel like you're supposed to leave feeling better or else you shouldn't be going to that one. But
although I could see the point of, if you're working through something, maybe you've got a lot to think about, so you're not feeling lighter when you leave. You've discovered that what's bothering you and what you've got to deal with.
Yeah. Whereas I self-analyzed so hard that by the time I got there, I've already done that self-analysis, and it's not new to me.
Oh, that could be. You are just more evolved.
I really self-analyze. And because psychiatry was an interest of mine, right? I have way too much equipment to do that.
Yeah.
Because I was pursuing that degree in college too, So, well, my associates was in psychology too. Then I had to switch it. But, yeah, I don't know. And again, I'm not a normal human being, and I get that. And emotionally, I don't share emotions with people, and I get that. So I get maybe it's very different if you are an actual normal human being who has emotions. There you go. Just to feel like I just ripped how somebody goes to therapy, and that's not at all my intention.
Oh, my goodness. So, our number one fan, Amy D., laughed so hard when you said, I am not kink shaming, about the guy who stuck the pins, the long metal rods.
Nice.
Somewhere. If you missed that episode, I'm not going to...
Albert Fish.
Yes. I
try very hard not to kink shame. At the same time, sometimes something is indicative of an issue. And there's a little shaming that might have to happen. I don't know. Yes.
Okay.
How was New York?
It was really good. It was, so for anybody who hasn't heard me talking about it, we threw a surprise party for my sister and brother-in-law's 40th wedding anniversary. And we pulled it off.
Yay.
Completely, totally surprised them. And I will say most of the work was done by my niece. I'm not going to take credit where it's not due. I helped, but What was really nice is my mom's cousin, Anne, and her husband, Alex, were coming. And Alex is turning 90 this year, and he's probably in better shape and more mentally there than I've ever been. So, I mean, he still plows his driveway, and they kayak, and they're very active and mentally alert. And so their daughter came in with her husband, and I said, "Where are your mom and dad? They didn't ride with you?" And she goes, it's a secret, but I have to tell you. I'm like, I'm all in. There's no better way to get my attention than what's supposed to be a secret. But so Anne's brother, John, and his wife, Jean, were up. And then her other brother, Vernon, were up visiting for the weekend. So they were all coming together. And I haven't seen them in years. Mm-hmm. So it was very nice to see everybody. And apparently they said, well, were we invited? And Anne said, it's family. You don't need to be invited. It's like, God, no, we had tons of food because my niece got cupcakes and we got barbecue and we just asked everybody to bring side dishes and it was wonderful.
Good.
Tons and tons and tons of good food. Nice. Some of which I'm replicating tomorrow. Oh. Dill pickle pasta salad.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
People came up to me afterward going, do you know who made that salad? So I made a note. Get recipe.
Right. It's always nice. Food is good.
Yes.
Yes.
And how was your traveling?
We drove to Arizona. So boy child got to drive.
Nice.
Took him out and trained him on the Tesla first. By the way, way cheaper to travel to Arizona in a Tesla than any of our other vehicles. But you've got to sit there and charge. Which wasn't too bad. Most like 20 minutes.
Oh,
it's not bad because then we'd go and find a bathroom and stuff like that. But anyway, that was the first road trip I've been on in the Tesla. They have driven to Arkansas once in the Tesla to visit my son's then significant other. So yeah, so that was nice. And we stopped in Santa Fe. We decided not to drive all the way through, even though it's only 11 hours, which is funny because back in the day we were driving straight through the Oregon, which is 20 some odd hours. And I've done that in one shot overnight and all that stuff. But now, no, I don't want to. And I don't want to be in the car that long. And I just want a room. So we got this weird hotel and everything was open. So it was a Residence Inn and they technically had 3 beds, which is why we got it. Because that's kind of hard to get, right?
It is.
And so we went there and everything was open. So even our bed was up in a loft.
Oh.
And then they had a Murphy bed, which is awesome because I love Murphy beds, the idea of them. But it's the first time I got to see and use one and pull one down.
Yes.
I was exciting. And then the other one was the sofa went out into a bed. And so that was I did not sleep that night at all because I could hear every move my kids made. Yep. And the sound of a sofa bed, right? My son was on it.
And those things are never comfortable.
No. And so he was tossing and turning. And then he accidentally hadn't turned off his alarm that he was setting to get ready for school starting next week.
Oh, right.
And so he had a 6 a.m. alarm. So right after I probably fell asleep, there was I didn't know whose alarm it was because I was so deep asleep. Then finally, after being up that long and struggling, that all I heard was there was this music in this half dream world, right? And so I was livid. And I thought my husband had set an alarm. And I was like, you should know better. And he had even gotten us late checkout at it, so we wouldn't have to get up early and we can just leave. Because our whole thing on this was we are going to relax. We are not setting a schedule. We are not, except for the last day, stay at the Airbnb, and we didn't pay for late checkout. But okay, one day. And so anyway, yeah. So then I finally got up because I gave up because then they went to do the breakfast and I tried to fall asleep, but I was too mad. And then they came back in and they were trying to be quiet, but you can't be quiet when everything's open. No. And so I got up and put on my shoes and went and walked around Santa Fe. I followed a butterfly, actually. I followed a monarch butterfly. Because they were down there. They were everywhere. And so I was taking a walk and then it went up this other street and I was like, okay. And so then I followed the butterfly, just trying to be in a better mood, right? Because I didn't want to be bitchy on vacation. That's why I separated myself. It didn't work. I was pretty bitchy the rest of the day. And then my poor son finally goes, it was me that I just didn't turn off my alarm. And he felt bad because then I was mean to my husband. So that was our first day. It didn't happen anymore after that. But yeah, we stayed at a neat Airbnb. We visited Stono for the first time. It's the third time I've been to the Grand Canyon.
Wow.
First time for my kids, though. Second time for Jeff, because he and I stopped there and we were going to Disneyland one year before we had kids. We were driving. So, yeah. But Stono I'd never been to. And I got to see the crater from Starman.
Yes.
I'm so excited about that. It really is. It's a big hole in the wall, but it's vast and it's awesome. And then you read about so it was 700 feet deep at first. Now it's 550 feet deep. It's just called the Meteor Crater in Arizona is what it's called. There's no branding from Starman, so obviously they couldn't get the licensing and stuff, but I so badly wanted something some kind of Starman thing, because it was one of my favorite movies when I was a kid, and I was like, I looked in every nook and cranny in case there was some one random little shelf there was So then I brought home a piece of the meteor or whatever, some little tiny fragment that probably isn't even really from it. And I don't care, because I'm still apparently that level of space nerd that you are as a kid. It's just hidden. I just didn't know it was there. It was latent. But yes, it was very exciting. You get to go down there and you look at the very bottom, and they have this whole setup because they drilled into it for some reason. I think they were trying to find... They've never found a big meteor from it. They've just found these tiny little pieces because it...
Yeah.
Blew up. But it was iron and all this stuff. So there's bits of iron. So anyway, they drilled down to find it. So there's this whole setup down there, and you look, and they have these kind of telescopy viewfinder thingies at the top, and each one is on something different, because there's a rock the size of a house up at the top that just got blown up and out when the crater happened, right? And so it's the house-size rock is what it says, and you look through and you're like, boy, I bet that sure is the size of a house, whatever. It just is a rock. And then here's the drill hole, and here's this fault. And I also am into geology stuff, which I learned when I took a geology class in college, and I was like, shit, this is fascinating. So much history. But anyway, and then you look at the very bottom, and there's a little astronaut. There's a whole astronaut suit at the very bottom that you can see if you zoom in.
Did you post a picture of that?
I did, because I have a telephoto lens, so I was able to do it. So it turns out, though, it looks tiny. It's 6 foot something. It's
wow.
Yeah.
It looks like a toy.
It's the size of a regular tall man. Yeah. I don't know. So yeah, it looks like a toy. And then you read that and you're like, really? It's just so far away. So yeah, it's out in the middle of nowhere. It really is there's just nothing. There's a lot of watch out for baby cattle and cattle signs. So there's ranches around there, but I looked for them and they were stealth cows. I didn't find one cow. There are no fences, so you're just speeding along this road in the middle of nowhere, and I'm like, I wonder how many cows got splattered for them to put up all these cow signs, because nobody's going the speed limit, because no fucking cop is out there on the way to this crater in the middle of nowhere. And apparently, I thought that we would end up going through maybe downtown Winslow, because I hadn't really looked at where it was, which is in a song, and I wanted to see that corner that's famous, standing on the corner in Winslow, Arizona. But it's on the outskirts of Winslow. It's barely Winslow, is what I'm saying. The
expression on your face. It's barely Winslow.
Barely Winslow. I gotta see it. But, yeah, so we did that. Oh my God, we went to this really good restaurant there, and it was called the Fat Olive. And it's one of two places in Arizona that's actually certified and gets checked every year by some institution in Italy for the type of pizza that they make, which is the wood-fired pizzas with the fresh mozzarella so anyway.
The burrata?
I don't know. I mean, it was all on there and I knew it in that moment, but I didn't give a shit, honestly. But anyway, the appetizer was a ball of heated, fresh, the mozzarella so that it was melty in the middle, and then garlic buttered toast thingies and balsamic, and the food wasn't cheap. But it was really good.
We got I will say, when we were in New York, we got some amazing food. Because we went to an Italian restaurant, and their gnocchi is the best gnocchi I've ever had. It's as light as a cloud. So I can't remember what I ordered. I think it was chicken cacciatore. And I said, instead of pasta on the side, can I get gnocchi? She's like, yeah, no problem. The fucking dish of gnocchi is big enough to feed 4 people as a meal. And I'm like, oh, I forgot. It's a really big serving. So I did have it for breakfast one day. It was very good. Yeah.
It's just potatoes.
It's the, well, kind of.
I mean, it's potatoes and toast together. What do you want from me?
So, but it was delicious.
That's good.
And then we went to a bar. Oh, catch this. We went to a bar and listened to live music.
Nice.
I'm like,
look at you being a grown-up.
Look at me being a 20-something.
I had hoped that we would do like a date night. I even took like
date clothes.
Appropriate. I mean, it wasn't dressy, but it was, I'm not wearing the athletic shorts that I'm wearing everywhere else. But we didn't pull that off. No, we also ate at a place called Lumberyard Brewing, which was kind of fun. There was synchrony because the company I work for in Arizona has an office there in Flagstaff.
Oh.
And so I did not go and meet people, but all these because I do the bookkeeping.
Right.
I see all the receipts of where they eat when they have to stay in town, right? Because there's a lot of travel for the stuff that they're doing to different cities. And so I was like, oh, I recognize this. Oh my God, all these places are right next to each other. So I went to one of them I'd seen multiple times, and it was pretty good. But it was fun because it's Lumberyard Brewing, and it's directly next to the train tracks, and 3 trains came through there.
Oh, nice.
When we were driving across New Mexico and Arizona, I have not seen that many trains since I was like 8. And they were being used more.
Wow.
So there was just always trains going east-west. Boop, 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 boop. Apparently we were on Route 66 for a while, and it was underwhelming, so I didn't go by any of the neat places that are supposedly on Route 66.
Yeah, I think you got to drive it a while to get...
Yeah, they don't have the Tesla chargers, so that wasn't... We were really close on a couple of them, though, for the Tesla chargers, and at one point, we were going to be at like 5%... energy or whatever, fuel, we'll say. And all of a sudden, it starts going that the charger is closed. Charger is shut down. Rerouting. And then because there was nothing else within driving distance to reroute us, it just kept saying recalculating until we shut it off. And we were like, oh shit, what do we do if it's closed? But then I waited like 20 minutes and then I plugged it in again and it had reopened. So there must have been like some short outage or something.
Oh, God.
But then it happened with a second one, the one in Santa Fe. And I was like, Oh, we went to Meow Wolf too.
Oh, how was that?
Oh, and we drove past the Breaking Bad house. So I don't know if people know, but the person who bought it absolutely hates that people come by and look at the house. And I can totally get that. At the same time, she probably knew what it was when she bought it. And it'd be like me buying the Goonies house. I love that house in Astoria. Nope, not going to buy it because I know there's going to be people there. But anyway, so they have actually built a wrought iron fence around it. Mm-hmm. And she likes to sit on the front porch and flip off everybody who comes by to take pictures of the house. So my son's been big on watching.
That's a little aggressive.
It is. Yeah. And it's like, so you have nothing else in life to do. She literally just sits there and waits for people and flips them off. So my son's very into, he's watched all Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul. And so he wanted to see it. And so we diverted. And we also went to a nail salon that's in Better Call Saul. I haven't watched Better Call Saul yet.
I haven't either.
It's supposed to be very good. But anyway, so we drove by there. It was closed, but it was. And then we drive to that and I'm like, we're not going to stop because I'm not into harassing people at their home anyway, right? And I was like, we will drive by and you may photograph as we're moving. Basically, was my meet you halfway, right? And sure enough, she was out there, but she was on her phone so we didn't get flipped off and we were a little sad. I actually considered stopping and take the picture just so she would flip us off. But I didn't because I don't want to harass somebody at her home. Yeah. At the same time, she does not have to sit on her porch and even see the people doing that. I'm all kinds of conflicted about this because I am big on privacy in my home, right? Mm-hmm. But that's why I would then not buy a famous house from a movie.
Right.
That people were already saying pizzas were being thrown on the roof because of something in the shot. I don't know. There's a thing with a pizza on the roof. So people would go order pizza and throw it on the roof. That's just stupid. But
that's a waste
again, conflicted.
Yes.
I want privacy, so my goal is to live in the middle of the woods where nobody will be able to drive by my house.
And throw pizza or anything else on your roof.
Correct. If you want to come by and just throw a pizza in a box on my porch so I can eat it, that is okay. They'll probably like watch me get famous someday and suddenly pizzas are being thrown. Like, that would be awesome on the one hand. On the other hand, not, because they really don't eat that much pizza.
And would you really eat pizza that just showed up on your doorstep?
Absolutely not. But I feel like it would amuse me. Like a clown showing up at my door with donuts.
Yes!
Right.
I made your donut dream come true.
You did.
I'm not going to make your pizza.
I should post that picture.
My God.
Of Nikki with a thing.
The blood dribbling out of her mouth.
Yeah, so if people don't know, there's a Hertz Donuts. I don't know if it's a chain or if it's just Colorado. It's a chain.
Oh, I don't know. I think it is a bigger chain than just Colorado.
Okay. So anyway, there's Hertz Donuts. And in October, they do a special where you can have a pizza delivered by a clown.
Donuts.
Oh, the fuck. Yeah, I just went back to the pizza. You can have donuts delivered by a clown. And I just so badly wanted that when I found out they were doing that. My birthday is in November, so MB wanted to surprise me with the donuts, but they don't do it in November. They just do it in October. So instead...
Let me say, you can get them delivered in November. I think you can get them delivered all year round, but they only do the scary clown, and this was before COVID, so I don't...
Yes.
But for a while on Facebook, there were all these... videos of people who are terrified of clowns who are getting the scary clown delivering the
like
donuts.
Grown-ass men on construction work sites running, shrieking because a clown showed up with donuts for them. It was fabulous, and I love clowns. Not in oh my God, they make me so happy. It makes me happy because they scare people.
Yes.
And therefore I love them. And so, yes, I just wanted a clown to show up at my door. So we used to put on events together, and short version, we were putting on the event and I was up on stage and in walks Thing 2 dressed like a clown, and then she opens her mouth and the blood comes out and she had brought me Hertz donuts.
I think she might have said happy birthday.
Oh yeah, probably.
Like totally deadpan.
And then I blah, blah.
She walks in because Thing 1 was with her. Thing 1 was driving. She had to walk in with a mouthful of fake blood, which is mint flavored, by the way.
Oh.
And she hates mint.
Oh no. I'd be like, yes. Oh, yeah.
And it was so funny because I'm standing on the stage with Shannon and I keep babbling and like waving my arms. So Shannon's attention is on me. So she doesn't
like a
see who walks in the door. Because I'm like, I just got to get her. Once she gets in the door, we're fine. But I got to distract Shannon. I'm doing a dance and waving my arms. And Shannon's probably thinking, wow, MB's had a little too much tea today.
Right. MB is well caffeinated.
That's a safe bet most any day.
Oh, I see, and I don't caffeine. Okay. All right, so you're going to start.
I am going to start. Okay. Oh, wait, I can get a little bit closer to the microphone now. We talked long enough that the sun went behind a cloud.
It is behind a very large cloud, but it will come
It went
out.
down a little bit. So, sometimes I know exactly what I want to do for the podcast. Like I have a file of ideas, and Thing 2 sends me tons of stuff. And sometimes it's just you're just kind of wandering around the internet seeing what catches your fancy. So I came across this story, and it was just one line in the story that I went, drop everything. I got to find out more about this. So you have to be prepared for some speculation in this one because it starts in the 1840s and their record keeping, their journalistic standards were a little different than what we have right now. Zephaniah and Julia Eddy.
Why?
It looked like a reaction to the name Zephaniah. Like a snap.
I really like that name. But no, it was a fly in my face.
Thank you. I needed that. Okay. Zephaniah and Julia Eddy arrived in Chittenden, Vermont in the late 1840s. I had ancestors in Vermont in at that time, so maybe they crossed paths. I do not know. Julia was reported to be a clairvoyant who could see the future and communicate with spirits. It was said that her great-great-grandmother was tried in the Salem witch trials and sentenced to death, but somehow managed to escape and return to Scotland. Don't know that many escaped.
I feel like we would have heard those stories.
Yeah. So, like I said, you have to have a little patience with this one. And her mother, Julia's mother, had second sight and often went into trances where she spoke with unseen beings. So, Zephaniah didn't have any special gifts like Julia did, but apparently their 8 children did. Here we are talking about big families again.
Oh my God.
Especially
mine doesn't.
Oh, okay. So they had 8 children, and especially sons William and Horatio. So the story goes that when they were infants, the children would disappear from their cribs and appear in other parts of the house or even outside. At school, their desks made strange knocking noises.
So they were changelings.
Perhaps. The desks and things would levitate. Slates and pencils and books would be torn out of their hands or would just start flying around the room. Now, this seems to indicate some witnesses, like other people are seeing this. Mm-hmm. So at home, spirit friends would play with the boys or help them with their chores, but they always disappeared when Zephaniah approached, because when he first saw them, he thought they were just neighborhood kids. But as he got closer, the spirit children disappeared. So every time he saw the spirit children, his corporeal sons got a beating.
Oh, why? I didn't expect that.
That was just Zephaniah.
How dare you play with ghosts?
Yeah, pretty much. So William in particular was prone to falling into trances from which his father could not awaken him.
Did he beat him while he was unconscious?
Yes.
Of course he did.
He would hit him. He poured boiling water on him.
Oh, shit.
He dropped hot embers on his hands, none of which worked, none of which woke him up.
Yeah.
And he had a scar on his hand for life from the hot ember. So, and Zephaniah was reputedly very religious and thought that this was the work of the devil.
Okay.
So...
It actually makes sense now when you put it that way.
So, but he got over his disappointment with his children when he realized how big spiritualism was becoming and how he could capitalize on it by exploiting his children. So here's the sentence that made me go, I have to read more about this. I have to know the real story. Zephaniah had enough of the paranormal activity and sold his 2 sons to a traveling sideshow where they were cruelly exploited for 14 years.
Damn.
He sold his children because he was sick of their shit. He was sick of all this hocus pocus, supernatural stuff going on. So he sold them.
He is a great
to
dad.
To a carny.
Great dad.
Yeah, dad of the year. So sadly, the abuse that the 2 boys suffered at the hands of their father was kind of mild compared to what happened when they went on the road. Because they would go into trances, and the carny guy, would challenge the audience. See if you can wake them up. Do whatever you want. Try to wake them up. So yeah, they were abused that way. They had hot wax poured into their mouths to see if they could produce spirit voices when they were unable to speak.
What would hot wax have to do with...
Yeah.
To block their mouth so
Yes.
that if it came out, it was a spirit.
Yes. They were occasionally stoned and shot at by angry mobs.
Oh, I imagine that was a carnival-wide thing.
Yes. So they toured the U.S. and Europe until Zephaniah died in 1861. So then they returned to the family farm with their widowed mother and their sister Mary, who was apparently also spiritually endowed, able to contact the other side. So together they built a small inn called the Green Tavern, where they continued to give nightly seances 6 days a week.
Wow.
Yeah. And the Green Tavern is still there. So usually which is what got me into this, I think. Usually one of the brothers would enter a spirit box, which is just a small room with only a chair in it, and would enter a trance. And then musical instruments would play on their own, strange lights appeared, odd noises were heard. An array of different spirits would appear and take the stage. There were Native Americans, there were Africans, there was a mother and child, a swaggering kind of belligerent sailor, a young girl. It was such a huge variety of supernatural creatures reported at the Eddy's home that Chittenden began to be called the spirit capital of the universe.
Okay.
So, the various spirits didn't just appear, sometimes they also interacted with the audience. And they ranged in size from very small, like maybe 3 feet tall, to the word that was used a lot was towering, that they were 6 and 7 feet tall. I'm gesturing with my hand, so you can all imagine that.
There you go.
They spoke a variety of languages and dialects, including one time an audience member spoke to the spirit of her dead husband in Russian. In addition to apparitions, the spiritual buffet at the Green Tavern included rappings, which I'm like, that's so easy to fake.
Yeah.
Moving physical objects, spirit paintings, automatic writing, prophecy, speaking in tongues, healings, levitation, teleportation, and more. So in 1874, an avowed skeptic and Civil War veteran named Henry Steele Olcott heard about the occurrences and decided to investigate. Apparently that was a thing you could just do back then, just to appoint yourself the investigator. So he had a very good reputation. He was a successful lawyer. He had been on a government panel investigating the assassination of Lincoln. So he was established as a stalwart, steady member of the community. So he spent 5 days observing the shows, writing about his experiences for the New York Sun. These reports were so popular that another paper hired him to return to the Green Tavern with an artist and stay there and continue reporting. He came to believe in what he had come to debunk, saying he could not see any evidence of faking. So I do want to point out, the room was reportedly lit by a single lantern that was some 30 feet away from the stage. And it was 1874 we're talking about. But he had carpenters and engineers search the spirit cabinet. He had them measuring the stage, like drawing blueprints and measuring everything, sealing the windows with cheesecloth and candle wax, checking for concealed compartments, the whole 9 yards. Olcott concluded, so he began to believe in this because he could not see any way it could be faked. He concluded that if the brothers were smart enough to pull this off as a sham, which he doubted, they still couldn't afford the numerous actors, the many trunks of costuming they would need, or the money for special effects. Because the Eddys did not charge for these seances. They were free. Anybody could attend. They only made minimal money from people who actually stayed at the inn and were paying for room and board like any normal traveler would.
Okay.
Now, they did attract a lot of people from pretty much all over the world. But one of the things he described seeing was when the people gathered, they walked into the woods, into a canyon where there was a cave, a natural cave with big, huge rocks making like an archway into it. And one of the brothers went into the archway and went into a trance, and all these figures came out, some of them being 7 feet tall, and Olcott and his people went in and searched the cave and said there was not another entrance. It was empty when they got there. It was empty when they left. So where did all these people come from? I am not trying to persuade anyone that it was or wasn't real. I'm just telling you what they said.
I will say them not charging really helps.
Yes.
Further.
So Olcott eventually published a book about his experiences that had hundreds of detailed drawings and, like I was saying, the schematics of the rooms. He had affidavits from witnesses and reports from outside agents like the engineers and carpenters. It's called People from Other Worlds, and you can still get it on Amazon. As of yesterday, it was $2.99 for the Kindle edition, and I was like, I might have to get that. Occasionally, audience members were allowed to touch one of the apparitions, and one declared that her skin felt cool and clammy. Other audience members, I'm like, how rude were people back then? Skeptical of what they were experiencing, took matters into their own hands and would tackle the ghosts. They would just leap up out of the audience and tackle. Occasionally, they would discover it was the medium, himself or herself, and it was quickly explained away with the idea that the spirits had taken over their bodies.
Right.
Of course. Eventually, the Eddys went their separate ways. This cracked me up. Horatio moved across the road, took up gardening, and continued to do the occasional seance and did magic tricks for the local children.
Okay.
Mary...
Sounds peaceful.
Yes. Mary moved to... It actually said he took up light gardening. And I'm like, as opposed to heavy gardening? Let's see. Where was I? Mary moved to East Pittsford and became a professional medium. And William, according to one source, left public life altogether and became a bitter recluse on the family farm.
Somebody had to. One of them had to.
Yes. So, at the time, an American neurologist, George M. Beard, claimed the Eddys were complete frauds and that he could replicate all of this costumes and effects with a few dollars worth of drapery.
Drapery.
One source said the Eddy's seance trick was exposed by a magician named Chung Ling Soo, where he demonstrated how curtains and fake hands... It was actually, I thought it was kind of, for the time, I thought it was kind of brilliant. It was a hand cast out of lead that was hollow, so he could put his real hand inside it. So he could put it on the person's arm next to him, but then he could withdraw his hand. But the body heat from his hand made it feel warm. Anyway, I thought that was pretty ingenious for the time. He said that left Eddy able to perform the ruse with the, especially with the musical instruments and the rapping. Here's a little fun fact for you. Chung Ling Soo was the stage name of William Ellsworth Robinson, who stole his entire act and backstory from a magician named Ching Ling Soo or Chung Ling Soo. It was one letter difference. He just changed one letter in the guy's name and stole his act. He, however, is most well known for his accidental death while trying to perform a bullet catch trick.
Mm-hmm.
And
that'll do it.
Well, I was talking about this and Joe said, "Oh, it wasn't unloaded, was it?" And I said, "No, here's the thing. For this particular trick, the gun had 2 barrels. It didn't look like it, but the gun had 2 barrels. So you could see the bullet being loaded into one barrel, and it was actually the other barrel that fired. So the gunpowder went off, but no bullet was shot. So what happened was he didn't clean his gun. So there was buildup in that fake barrel, and when that went off, it triggered the other barrel that the bullet was actually in.
I mean, combustion or whatever, right? Yeah.
So, if you believe the skeptics, and I'm not saying you shouldn't, but there was no good explanation. They did talk about how, okay, this is how they did this trick. This is how they faked This is how they faked the seance. Easy for someone to say. But you have to accept that the whole town had to be in on it. If they were going to have the appearance of 20 to 30 spirits every night, 6 nights a week. So, think about that for a second, but then realize, because at first I was like, well, that kind of lends credibility, that and the fact that they weren't charging for it.
And how do you get a whole town for the people to do something if you're not paying them?
Well, but the popularity of these shows did bring people in from all over the country and all over the world. So it did benefit the entire town. There are people coming in. They need places to stay. They need to be fed. They need their horses put up somewhere. So the whole town was benefiting from it. It was, and it would employ the locals. And there was one anonymous source. It wasn't, somebody claimed that his grandmother once told him, slipped and said she had earned money as one of Eddy's angels. So it remains I can understand how a lot of it was fake, but I don't believe they have properly explained how all of it could have been faked.
And it could be that they had certain things that they were able to do, and then they built up a better show so that they would have this extravaganza, right?
Yes.
Because you had to bring the people in.
And apparently they really did drop into trances, although I am not a doctor, and I've never played one on TV, but my first thought was, oh my God, did epilepsy run in their family? Because there's a name for it, which thing one graciously told me, but I don't remember, for the
absent seizures,
yes,
petite malls. My daughter used to have them. That's
yeah.
how I learned about them.
The absent seizure. And so I'm thinking, could that have been what was going on?
I will say that petite malls are only supposed to, hers were actually extremely long because they could last a couple minutes, but that's it. But technically, petite malls are usually very short, like a matter of seconds, zoned out, basically, if that helps.
I don't know.
Yeah, took her to a neuro, did all that stuff. Good times.
And back then, you couldn't get a CT scan.
Yeah.
And would they have wanted to?
No. I mean, if it wasn't, well, it was hurting them because they were getting hurt while they were in them. So, yeah. I bet, and here's the thing about them not getting paid. If the entire town was benefiting off it, in that day and age, I feel like you could live off of if the local, this person gave you this sort of food or stock. Here's this farmer is giving you dairy because you're bringing in money, and this one is giving you vegetables. You know, like I feel like you could actually subsist on that. You wouldn't be rich, but
they could
be supported.
Yes, and they were making some income from the inn because people did stay there. They had to pay for their room and board, but so yeah, I was just like, and plus, I don't think we've talked about Vermont before, have we?
Probably not.
So there, check that. We've got
New Hampshire, Maine.
We've got Minnesota and last week and Vermont.
Australia.
Well, you've talked about Australia before.
I have, but I've done a few countries, I guess.
Yeah, so we've done England. I think I did one in Germany.
England. I did Russia. I've done Russia maybe twice, actually.
I did Napoleon being attacked by rabbits. It still cracks me up.
I was talking with a friend about how, because, you know, people knock the language of German and they're like, it's ugly and it's a brutal language. I actually really liked it. And I had a boyfriend who used to talk to me in German because I liked it when he talked to me in German. So we were talking about it and she was like, oh, Russian can actually work really well for that too. And I was like, ugh. And then I had to shut, because here's the thing. My experience with Russian was my dad speaking. And I'm like, I'm not even going to explore that. Thank you. Have a lovely day. I just thought that was funny. I was like, uh-huh. But, all right, I am doing the Pom Pom Mom, also known better as, thanks to I think a TV movie, the Texas Cheerleader Murdering Mom. All right, here we go. Wanda Webb was born in 1954, a small-town Texas girl with an overbearing and conservative father who worked at a concrete plant. I think her mother was like a school lunch lady. She wanted to be something, but she simply wasn't in a position to do so. Even her desire to be a cheerleader was met with her father telling her that was for whores. Instead, that's the kind of, Texas conservative dad, hello, churchgoer. Exactly what I expect.
I was just like, wait, cheerleaders are whores. All right.
They dress like whores and Instead, she settled into the life expected of her, marrying Tony Harper, a high school classmate, at 18. Interestingly, man, the stories were all over the place, and that's because she hasn't given out her information, really. So this is what's been gleaned about her. Because, like, I read one, and it's what I originally had, and then I found nothing else saying that. And I found a good actual article, and I've decided that this real, like, journalistic article was the one I was going to trust, basically. Because they were like, she got knocked up at 16 and got married. But no, it doesn't appear that that's true. And I did the math on dates in that article, and they were correct. So I do not believe that was the right thing. I think she got married at 18 straight out of high school, which is a very classic thing, you know? So they had their son Shane in 1973 when Wanda was 19, and their daughter Shane and Shanna, let's just take a moment there, was born 4 years later. I did find an article that said that she was very much, because she was this person who had these big dreams and stuff, the character of Shane was like this big, heroic, awesome figure. Shane,
Western,
I guess, yeah. And so
John
they
Wayne?
were both named after that character, basically, was why they were named that way. But anyway,
I just rolled my eyes.
I know.
So
it's
hard.
just so hard. It was the first thing I read it, and I was like, wait, because they say their daughter's name, and I'm like, wait a second. I go back and look, and I'm like, yep. Okay.
Ugh.
All right. But the marriage wasn't a good one. As we admit it, marriages at 18 often aren't. The two got divorced, and Wanda kept full custody of the kids for a while. It sounded like ultimately they would end up with split custody, so I'm not sure how true that full custody thing is. Because I also found this whole thing going off about, again, the first stuff I found was that he was abusive and a drinker and blah. may or may not have been true. Didn't find in any of the real journalistic articles. So I don't.
Yeah, sometimes
they were young. Whatever,
The sensational stuff, I deleted a lot.
So I even doubt the full custody thing. I know that later it was shared, and so I imagine it was shared, but maybe because they were little, she maybe had them 5 days a week and him weekends or something.
Although it was Texas?
Yes.
So it could have been.
Yes, because nobody likes the dads. Ask me how I know. When Shanna was 5, her mother bought her a cheerleader outfit. This was her dream had been officially transposed, right? And so whether her daughter wanted to be or not, Wanda intended for her daughter to become a cheerleader. Of all the fucking aspirations for your daughter in life, my big dream for my daughter is she be a cheerleader. Are you fucking kidding me? But we'll just sidestep that. I hope my daughter grows up to have been a cheerleader in high school. Well, what do you want her to actually grow up to be? A cheerleader in high school. Okay. Wanda was briefly married to a man in Beaumont, but ultimately ended up in a better marriage. So this would be her third marriage. And it was definitely a more profitable one. Her new husband, C.D. Holloway, was wealthy and about 20 years her senior, and they'd met in church. The wealth trickled down to Shanna, who was spoiled with clothes and dance lessons, while reports state Shane didn't really get the attention his sister did. Mom didn't have big plans for her son, right? So Wanda had aspirations only her daughter could fulfill in her place. Pretty much. While she'd married up, Wanda was still stuck in Channelview, Texas, that same crappy small town. It's not far from Houston, and it's wedged between oil towns. This town is owned by Mobil. This one is owned by Exxon. And they didn't get to be, so there's money in those towns, but not in Channelview.
Okay.
So, and it's called Channelview, by the way, because there's a river channel, and there's a view of it. The air and rain were toxic because of all the refineries and shit around them. Many of the townsmen worked at those surrounding refineries in the neighboring towns. Articles about Wanda often addressed the dismal conditions, and so it really was conveyed over and over. And again, also the journalistic article, those ones really played it up. One of them was written by somebody from that town who had finally escaped to Pasadena. Okay, so he wrote about his hometown, and he was like, it was a piece of shit, really. So anyway, it was like paragraphs describing how dismal this town is. So, for a lot of people, it ended up being a dead-end town. They talked about leaving, they never did, as you often see with stuff like that, right? It's not as easy as all that to pick up your life and move, first of all. But
and for some people, it's hard to move away from family.
I know.
But for some of us, it's not.
Right? So, obviously for Wanda, this is kind of all of her fixation, everything that she'd ever dreamed was suddenly on her daughter. She had no more aspirations. It was dead in town for her. Those around her described her as well-spoken, educated, nicely dressed. But a lot of those, she was always dressed impeccably comments were very Southern in nature.
Oh, yep.
And there was an obvious undercurrent of jealousy and people kind of thinking she was putting on airs. She was uppity. She was acting like she was above the rest of the people in the town. So on the outside, they could say, yeah, she was quite pleasant. She volunteered at the school. She volunteered at the church. She did all this. And they were like, and she was always impeccably dressed. So anyway, it was always interesting. There were so many backhanded. One of the guy who had been from there and went back there to write about her, like interviewed townspeople and was always like that half-buried, snarky, Southern nastiness. Anyway, unfortunately, it sounded like kids sometimes felt that way about Shanna too, because she had designer purses and clothes and stuff. But at the same time, it turns out she was actually well-liked and popular in a lot of ways. So maybe not so much. And again, that was something that I got a lot of conflict between the articles, but it seemed like actually she was fine. And not like bullied or hated or anything like that. But of course, she's going to school with a bunch of kids of refinery workers. And here she is with her rich daddy who owns his own business. Right. And, I mean, not her dad, but her stepdad. Anyway, she was an honor student. She got voted in as vice president of the student council in her 8th grade year, so she couldn't have been that disliked. Right. Her mother got her private cheerleading lessons and dance lessons and tumbling lessons at a place called Alpha Gymnastics. That there was a whole article about what a toxic place Alpha Gymnastics was, because when you think of This all very much reminded me of pageant circuits for kids when I was reading through this. So bear in mind, think of these moms as pageant moms. Even though it's cheerleading in Texas, people.
Well, do you remember when
That's what your girls aspire to.
When we went to Oktoberfest in Hays, Kansas, and we went and watched the homecoming parade. And it's not just, it's, the high school, and you get the college has different groups. But do you remember how many Hays, Kansas, not a big town. There had to have been at least 3 dance academies where the girls all had to have identical hair, had to be done identically. It had to be curled the same way.
Yeah.
And we were like, oh my God, it's like watching little
Stepford groups.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, and probably small town has something to do with that, not just Texas, right?
Yes.
But we do know that football and cheerleading. If you're a boy, you're going to play, you better play football if you want to be up there. If you're a girl, you better be a cheerleader. But here's the thing. Since cheerleading was such a big deal there, it had very high requirements. You couldn't go like the idiots who were cheerleaders at Air Academy when I went there and couldn't even do so you know what the test was? They had to be able to do the running man, for fuck's sakes. The running man. You didn't get onto the cheerleading squad without ample qualifications. And that's exactly where Shanna and her mother intended her to be. So again, all of those private lessons, they were paying all this money for all this stuff just so she could be her cheerleader. I shouldn't mock it. It was, I'm not going to kink shame cheerleading either. Okay? God. It was in 1991 that Shanna tried to go out for the cheerleading team, but she was up against the girl who had been president their 8th grade year when she was VP, a girl whose mother, Verna Heath, had been a twirling champion in her own childhood. Oh. Verna had lived the youthful life Wanda had coveted. Her mother had brought up 3 twirling champions and 2 4-H champions, and now owned a dance studio where Amber, Shanna's classmate and Verna's daughter, had been brought up learning from her grandmother. So it wasn't just, she got all the paid lessons and shit too, but she had this whole familial, it's like karate in the Lee family, okay? Where they were like, Brandon Lee started at 2? That's old. Yeah, for karate, like martial arts. He got shit for not starting it earlier or something,
yeah, so
I remember.
She grew up in it.
She grew up in it, just completely immersed in it. And like they had gone to the same Alpha Gymnastics. Of course they had. This wasn't a big town, so this was the place. She was an honor student like Shanna. She was popular. So they had those things in common, but she had an edge, right? So while Shanna and Wanda had done everything right on the surface, there was just ultimately someone more qualified. Shanna and Amber weren't enemies. I want to make that clear. The better articles made that clear. They weren't enemies. They weren't friends. They had been friends when they were little. In elementary school, when they were attending a local Christian school. And they'd had sleepovers. And the moms had coffees. And they took turns driving the kids to school. Right. So, like, this was a kind of one of those normal mom friendships, right? And the kids were friends. But they kind of grew apart. They, again, never enemies. This was not... These 2 girls were not competing with each other. Their mothers were. Okay? That's the part I want to make really clear. These girls didn't do anything wrong ever through any of this. But, so of course, they had all this stuff in common. And they had that same mother who was like, you're going to do this. Namely, so the mothers also had a lot in common. They were really the same kind of women in general and had those aspirations for their daughters. And they were willing to do anything it took to give their daughters whatever they wanted, especially if it was of their own personal interest. While Verna was trying to give her daughter the things she'd had, Wanda was trying to give her daughter the things she hadn't, never had, and that she'd wanted so badly. Oh. So they'd both largely done the same things to get their daughters to those places. Until Amber beat out Shanna for the coveted position on the cheerleading squad. So it actually starts back in 1989. The story ends in 91, but in 1989 was when the girls first ran for cheerleader, which they could do in 7th grade. Wanda had removed Shanna from that private Christian school and enrolled her for a semester in the district school so she'd be eligible to then try out for the squad. So she had planned all this ahead of time. She'd carefully figured out what she had to do. Verna didn't do the same, but while her daughter was still at the Christian school, she was lobbying for her daughter, trying to make it so that she could also get on the squad while attending the Christian school with the intention of switching her eventually. I think the next year she intended to, or something like that. So she's picking her daughter up at school early and driving her to this other school to meet the kids and lobby. This was a full-on, insanely political thing. She's like missing school to go do this. And so she ran it was an actual campaign for her daughter.
That's crazy.
And here was the thing there. Students were the ones who chose the cheerleaders. It was not a coach or a teacher. It was the other students who chose the cheerleaders. So it was
another popularity contest.
Absolutely.
Oh.
So
Wanda was like, why would it make any... Why is she not lobbying the school board? Okay.
Yes. So Wanda's very upset now because she sees the inevitable end of this. And to her friend was seemingly running a campaign against her daughter. She had been crossed by a woman she'd once been friendly with and had lunches and coffees and done all these. The Verna's husband was quoting an article and he was like, once Verna braided Wanda's hair. Like that to him was like the epiphany of they were friends. They weren't best friends. They were mom friends. You've never braided my hair. I don't often braid my own hair. Also, your hair is too short.
I was going to say.
I don't think I've ever braided my daughter's hair. I don't even know. So, indignant, hurt, and angry, Wanda complained to the school board first. She went to them first. She was like, she doesn't go here. She can't do this. This is unfair. And
she doesn't even go here.
She doesn't even go here. Oh my God. So it really didn't accomplish anything later because they were afraid of pissing off C.D. Holloway, the husband who was on the board of the bank and all this stuff. They would eventually make a rule that you had to be at the school for at least a semester before you could try out for the squad. But Amber was already grandfathered in at this point, and so Wanda didn't accomplish anything. So next, she went to their parents, and she was like, this isn't fair. This isn't right. Stand with me. This is barring this little girl from following her dreams. It wasn't fair. So that didn't really work. So then she started lobbying to the students, talking to them and calling the Amber the outsider and trying to convince the kids they didn't want an outsider. I'm like, how much were the schools letting these fucking moms talk to the children at the school? How disgustingly unfair and unright and unsafe, frankly.
Right, but it used to be you didn't...
I know.
Anybody and everybody could walk onto a school campus. I could be
just a weird stranger who looked at the school and decided to walk on it, and nobody's really going to do much. And like, can I help you, though? So, yeah, she's lobbying the children, and it didn't matter. Amber got in, Shanna did not. There was one too few positions available, open. So then along came 8th grade, and it started all over again. This time, Wanda called on her ex, Shanna's father, and he had the idea to get rulers and pencils with Shanna's name on them. And the two of them, it actually said, like, vote for Shanna for cheerleader captain, or like something all along the ruler and the pencil. And they split the cost, and Wanda went to the school and handed out Shanna didn't hand them out. Wanda went to the school and handed them out. And here's the thing.
She must have wanted to crawl into the ground.
That's the thing. I kept thinking that. Like,
that poor girl. Can you imagine? How would your kids feel if you went to their school?
Right? And was just like, vote for student council president or something.
Oh,
like,
ew.
Yeah,
ew.
It's disturbing.
Yes.
So it turned out, though, that the rulers were against the rules. And I couldn't find specifically how they were against the rules of campaigning. They called them the school campaign rules. So obviously there was plenty of campaigning happening, right? Couldn't have just been these two. And I'm like, really? Because so it was illegal to hand out school supplies that the kids couldn't actually afford. A lot of them couldn't afford a ruler like that. And they were handing them out free, and they had some words on them. They weren't like, fuck the other girl or anything.
Right.
But they weren't allowed. They violated the rules. My thing was, Verna the year before had come and handed out flyers with chocolates. So it's okay to give the kids propaganda and sugar, but not to give them school supplies.
And she got her daughter in when she wasn't even attending the school.
Right. So it seemed to me like I felt like there was some sort of school board favoritism, but I don't know.
That's what it sounds like.
So anyway, the vice principal walked around and collected the rulers and pencils, and then she went and she gave out more. And so then he called a meeting of the parents from the cheerleading squad, and they disqualified Shanna because of her mother's action. So she was not even allowed to try out.
Oh.
So at this point, Shanna said, I don't want to I don't want to be a cheerleader. I don't want to do this anymore. This isn't fun, right?
No. It doesn't sound like it had been fun for a very long time.
No. And so she just wanted to be done. She went to her dad and she was like, I don't want to, or, I don't want to do this anymore. Wanda didn't care. Wanda was in it now. This was now a war.
She was in it.
She had been personally affronted. Yep. And now, by God, her daughter was going to get on that squad. So she completely ignored her daughter's desire not to be doing it. The girls were now in Channelview High School. So we're up here. And cheerleader tryouts would be in March. A deflated Shanna had no choice but to rejoin the fight. Her mother's determination didn't leave her any opening for argument.
That's just
incredible. And Wanda was already... The cheerleader tryouts were in March. I said that on purpose because Wanda was already doing the lobbying and stuff at the beginning of the school year. Fallish. Was a little bit into it. She's already doing all the shit. She actually took a job working for the band director in a clerical position to then get herself in a position to ask around and be like, so what could I do to give her an edge? She's in there actively doing this. And of course it didn't get anywhere. So now her job, she has this whole job and it's not giving her daughter an edge. So now we touch on Wanda's ex-brother-in-law, Terry Harper. She'd married Tony Harper.
Okay.
Terry Harper had rubbed up against the law a bit in his life, we'll say. He'd been arrested for often minor things, but drunk driving and getting into trouble in bars, getting into scraps, that sort of thing. And so he had just recently decided to go straight to quit drinking alcohol. He'd found religion and he wasn't going to do anything else wrong. And it's great for him. But she was the only criminal, or he was the only criminal Wanda knew. And this was funny. There was a whole aside because they're like, so he'd done these little things and she's going to go to him about this. And this is very common. People will, when they are seeking out, say a hitman or something, go to whoever they know who's been arrested, even if it was one night in jail. It's very normal.
Really?
They just think that somehow they're suddenly a criminal mastermind and they can do it. So it happens all the time. That's why so many get busted. That's why so many go to the police and get wired. And then the person gets caught trying to hire something to kill their spouse or whatever it is. Because they go to some idiot who got busted on some minor drug charge, like possession of marijuana. And they're like, hey, would you like to do a hit for me? So anyway.
See, if I needed to find a hit person,
you come to me.
You.
I've never even been in jail.
I'm not implying that you would personally perform the hit. I just think
I might know some things.
You would be able to help me get that set up. I don't know why I would hire a hitman. There's nobody out.
Yeah, no. Wanda showed up at his place one night. I think he lived in a trailer and she just honked until he came out. And so
that's classy.
Right? So he came out and he's like, okay, so what's up? And she was really weirdly cryptic. And she's like, we need to talk, but not here. No, not out in the middle of nowhere in a trailer park. Instead, she had him meet her at Bo's, a convenience store where they parked in the parking lot and met in her car. How's that more private? I don't know. She didn't tell him what she wanted right away. Instead, asking him, how much do you love your niece? And so she went in it that way and she kind of built around that. And he said, of course I love my niece. And she was like, what would you do? What would you do for your niece? And he's like, well, I mean, I would give my life for my niece, that sort of thing. She's like, great. So I'm going to need you to kill a mom and her daughter for me, for your niece. And he's like, huh, what now? So he said, I would never do that. And she asked him if he knew someone who would. And he said, no, I don't know that kind of person. And so she got frustrated. She's like, I'm going to contact you again. And she has him get out of the car and she takes off. She didn't contact him right away. But on Christmas Eve, so I think it was around Thanksgiving to start. On Christmas Eve, his niece, so I'm assuming she was with Dad's family for there. And that's why the mom wasn't there for Christmas. Niece comes to him, Shanna, with a number written down, and she says, my mom asked you to call her at this number. It was like a payphone outside a thing. She was so, oh my God, she'd been watching some TV movies. And he did. He knew it was going to be about, and he's like, I wonder if she's going to take it all back and be like, oh my God, I can't believe I said that to you. Nope. Nope. Not at all. So he calls her, and Wanda once again said she needed him to kill 2 people or find someone who would. And that his niece's entire future hinged on this, like this is important. He was like, why doesn't she just try out? And if she doesn't make it, well, that's life. And she was like, she'll be devastated. She'll never try again. And like, she just kept like, that's the rationale. She'll be devastated. Well, it's going to happen in life at some point. Let me tell you. Scared now because he's like, okay, she's really serious. And he figured if she would find somebody else if he didn't go through this. So he went and he talked to his brother, Tony, and Tony said, it's time to go to the police.
Yay, Tony.
Yeah. And the police didn't really believe him at first, right? They're like, okay. And like, she's really going to do it. I'm sure this is just her being upset about something. They blew him off. But he kept saying, no, she's still contacting me. She kept calling him and she kept doing her weird illicit shit. And so finally they were like, all right. We'll wire your phone and we'll see what happens with the phone conversations. And so they did that. And it was the next few weeks. I think they did it for 3 weeks. Wanda called and spoke with Terry multiple times during that time. And she just straight up was saying it. And the police were like, oh, okay, well, she really does seem to mean it. So they said, all right, we're going to set a price. You tell them you found somebody. You tell them it's $5,000 to kill both mother and daughter and $2,500 to kill just the mother. And Wanda said, well, I can't afford $5,000. But Verna she was like, that's too rich for my blood. But Verna being killed off would devastate her daughter so much that she wouldn't even try out. Was her rationale. God. So one day, Wanda dropped Shanna off at church for, like a junior event or whatever there. And she went over to Terry's and she handed him a pair of real diamond earrings as kind of a down payment. So she had now officially paid.
Yes.
And she said to him, I couldn't pull the trigger myself, but I can sure do it this way.
Oh my God.
And she was arrested within a few hours. With her mother under arrest for trying to set up a murder of her rival, Shanna did not go to the cheerleading tryouts.
Shocker.
Clearly. There were 4 open slots that year, and with Shanna's absence, there were exactly 4 girls trying out. So here's the kicker. Had her mom not done this bullshit, because Shanna really did have talent,
right?
She would have been on the team, probably. Without the bullshit, her daughter would have had a normal life and probably been on the cheerleading train. There would have been another girl disappointed and she would have tried it the next year. They were in 9th fucking grade.
Oh my God.
This wasn't the end of the world. So, in the meantime, the town was flooded with reporters because this just went gangbusters. Well, I remember it being in the news. I remember watching the Leslie Ann Warren version of the TV movie about her, but Holly Hunter also was one of the played her.
Oh, I bet she did a magnificent job.
Oh, I'm certain they both did. But Leslie Ann Warren is a very specific type of actress, and so it's stuck in my head that way first.
I just think Holly Hunter would have
over the top-ish.
Would have the crazy part.
Yes.
Very convincingly.
Oh, yeah. She's an amazing, actress. Yeah. So, even Johnny Carson joked about Wanda on The Tonight Show.
Oh, my God.
Movie offers were made. And again, multiple movies ended up being... I don't know if any of them were movies. I think they were all TV movies, but those were so big then.
Yes.
Oh, the network TV shows, or network channels always had the movie of the week and shit like that. And it was always a murder thing. There was always something like that. So yeah, boom. Each channel probably had a different version of it. So I could not find if either of the families made money from those films or if they were despite them,
right.
If they ended up accepting and if they didn't, the places would have been cool, we're going to do it anyway. So we're just going to interview all sorts of people about it. So I don't know. Wanda Holloway was tried for solicitation of capital murder. Her defense lawyer argued that Terry and Tony had worked together to set her up so Tony could have full custody of the kids. And Terry's ex-wife... He had been an alcoholic. He had been a scrapper. I don't think their marriage was great. It was probably abusive. Terry's ex-wife took the stand and claimed he'd told her he was going to set Wanda up and then he beat Terry's ex-wife so she wouldn't tell on him, is what she said. But Tony and Wanda had shared custody at that time and he had never tried to change that, through any legal means. Right. And how do you get somebody to say that they need somebody to kill... how do you get that out of somebody? You plant the idea ahead of time. Hey, you're having this rough time. But would they have known if she wasn't already asking about it?
And she was calling him. He wasn't calling her.
Yeah, so I see that as very unrealistic.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Clutching at straws.
Who knows? But I didn't really believe it. And I will say that when they talked to Shane, who was, by the way, an honor student, just to put that out here about, he was doing well despite nobody giving a shit about him, I guess. No, I mean, it probably wasn't that dire, but he was also an honor student. He had expressed wanting to go live with his mom or with his dad. But again, his dad had not in any way filed.
Well, he probably wanted to live with a parent who would pay attention to him.
Right? And if you don't care about him, then let him go live with his dad.
Or it could be he was just sick of 24-hour, 7-day-a-week cheerleading talk.
Right. Oh, my God.
Can you imagine?
No. Wanda was found guilty in 1991 for the solicitation charge and sentenced to 15 years in prison. But it was later found out that one of the jurors on her case was on probation for a felony, which meant they didn't qualify to be on the jury, so they declared a mistrial. It wouldn't be until September 9th, 1996, that Wanda would once more be convicted. This time she pled nolo contendere, no contest, and took the sentence willingly. Because she said she didn't want to put everybody through another court case. Maybe the most human thing she did there. Though she never expressed feeling bad about what she'd attempted to do. I mean, she never actually said, I did it. You know? This judge went easier on her and gave her 10 years, but said if she showed good behavior, she could go free after 6 months. So we aren't talking about like a hitman or an actual serial killer or anything like that. Probably she's not going to repeat this. But I do think there's a level of crazy there they should have been looking into and getting her help, because there was no guilt about trying to hire somebody to kill a child so her daughter could be a cheerleader. That's batshit crazy.
Yes, it is.
Okay. Anyway, there is a name for that sort of thing. It's called shock probation. The intention is to give the person just enough time in prison that they're kind of a scared straight thing.
Right.
Like, here's what it's like. It's not fun. I have a friend who was in for all of a couple days in like a just jail. And she said that really made it so that she changed her behavior because she never wanted to go back there again. That was jail. That wasn't prison.
Wow.
So, I mean, most mentally healthy people don't want to be in prison. So anyway, she was also fined $10,000. The Heaths also sued her, and they got a settlement of $150,000 in 1994. I don't know what specifically the charge was. During her stint in prison, CD quietly divorced Wanda. I mean, no shit. True to the judge's word, Wanda got out after 6 months with the understanding that she'd be on probation for 9.5 years, so that she would have served 10, right? And that she had to do community service. She was also not allowed to ever contact her brother-in-law or the Heaths again. Bernie Heath felt the punishment was fair, just so that I have that out there. She said she had no desire for Wanda to spend like 10 years in prison, but she wanted that justice. At the same time, she did sue her for money, and it's like, was there financial loss because of this? Because your daughter still got on the cheerleading team, and so, you know, I'm just not a fan of lawsuits for that. But anyway, since her release, Wanda has had a low profile. Not a lot is known about her current life. She went on talk circuits in the beginning, kind of in between when the mistrial was declared and when she finally got sentenced to jail. She was on Geraldo. She was on all those things. And here's the thing. I have a picture that I'll post, but she dragged Shanna on the talk shows with her during all this. And you can just see the vivid difference between, here is Wanda looking completely put together. Her nails are impeccably done. Her clothing is impeccable. Her hair, though it is Texas,
right
at that time period, and it's very large, it is still, at that time, would have been nice hair. And here's Shanna sitting next to her with her hair up, and of course her makeup is done and stuff, but she looks so deeply uncomfortable. And Wanda looks like she's exactly where she wants to be. That's just how I felt when I was looking at this picture. This little girl is sitting there just stick straight, like with her hands together, and she just looks so uncomfortable. Shannon went on to get married and have children of her own. I did see a 2012 interview with her that she did, and it was her first time like going and doing anything like that, answering any questions about it. And she said they're not close. And she ended up with really deep depression after everything that happened, but she's now been through therapy and she's come a long way since then.
Well, I'm glad to hear that.
Right, because her mother really did damage. I just, like, there's nothing about it, but she had to finish high school with these people.
Yeah.
She didn't get moved.
Oh.
She had to finish high school with these people. Like, how must they have treated her? Certainly she wouldn't have been popular anymore. So I don't know. I mean, again, there was nothing about it, but I imagine, well, in my sources, that it couldn't have been easy.
No.
Going to, because, you know, people, you all suffer from whatever the one person did. That's just how society works. You find out that your husband was a serial killer, you're still going to get side-eyed and blamed, and, well, why didn't she notice?
Yes.
And stuff like that. And mothers get blamed for the things their kids do. Less often than fathers. I mean, more often than fathers, but, like, fathers rarely get blamed for what their kids do, but...
They don't.
But mothers take a ration of shit because their kid did something. It's like, you only have so much control over what you can do. But, all right. So, morbidology in Wikipedia, but the big one that kind of helped me ground the other things I was looking at, and there were so many that I read and then just shut down so they don't get cited because they were bullshit, was The Cheerleader Murder Plot by Mimi Swartz in Texas Monthly. And then I also looked through another Texas Monthly article. So, at least it was like a newspaper. But anyway, yes, it's always kind of a letdown because it's the Texas Cheerleader Murdering Mom. And I think the name of that TV movie was actually the absolutely true story of the Texas Cheerleader Murdering Mom.
Was this the thing that inspired Serial Mom?
I don't know. I would think that it probably did.
Was that a John Waters movie?
Yes, I love it so much.
I haven't seen that in forever. It was...
So good.
Who's the woman? Kathleen Turner. She was magnificent.
It was one of her last roles for a while. Mm-hmm. And because she was already suffering from... What is it? Oh, it's not just arthritis. It's... Rheumatoid arthritis. I think that's what she has. Don't quote me. She has something like that that's very disabling. And she was already suffering from that when she made that movie. I read the trivia because I love that movie. She had so much fun and people were like, oh no, you can't play a role like this. But look at, she does great in a black comedy. Yeah. War of the Roses.
My favorite. Oh, one of my all-time favorite
movies. And Serial. And she said she had so much fun, but I know she was in a ton of pain when she made that movie too. So... And then that's what people saw. I think it's the, what is it? It's treated with like the steroid stuff. Mm-hmm. And that's why I say the weight gain and the voice stuff.
Yeah.
Yes. So, but that was like the last.
Well, that would explain why I've seen her on a couple of things. And I'm like, what is the one where she's somebody's.
She was Chandler's mom on Friends. Or wait, Dad. Sorry, she was Chandler's dad on Friends.
But no, since then, she was on something where she was the ex-wife. Uh-huh. Because there's like a phone call. And she comes up on the screen and you're like, holy shit, that's Kathleen Turner.
Oh.
But it might have been the thing Michael Douglas did. The such and such method.
Kaminsky.
The Kaminsky method.
Oh,
it might have been
I only watched the first 2 episodes of that.
So, I loved that show.
That would be fun. I love it when like people who had chemistry in a previous thing like bring the other one in on stuff.
But that would explain why I think we only saw her on these phone calls. And I think she was always sitting down.
Okay.
Well, which would make sense if you take a phone call that you're sitting. But that would be a nice way to include her without having her do something that's going to put her in a great deal of pain.
Interesting. Yeah.
Pretty sure don't quote me on that. But I think she was a doctor. Yeah, and she was his ex-wife, mother of their child. I think.
That's funny. I'd kind of forgotten all of that.
She was also in, is it Body Double? Long time ago.
Or something Heat or...
Body Heat?
Body Heat.
Where somebody ends up dead, but it's not her. It's the actress who played Reva Shane on Guiding Light. So, I don't know.
I don't know. I always just wanted to... She's always been so... She was amazingly like sensual.
Yes.
Right? But I always wanted her voice. God, yes. I love her. Loved her voice. So, yes. That's it. That's all today, folks.
And I cut off the page that had my sources on it.
Oops.
I know it was only in your state and Wikipedia, but there were a couple of other places. But I mentioned that book. I might have to read it.
Yeah, it's $2.99.
Right?
On Kindle. How can you not?
I couldn't believe, and it wasn't like it had been out of print, and it was just like, yep, here. Wow. And I want to say the paperback was like $14.99 or something.
I'm just going to go and I'm going to find things that that are like old, and then I'm just going to reprint all of those, then I'm just going to make money. I'm not really going to do that. That seems like it would take a lot of work.
It does.
And really not interest me either. So
I was going to say, it's not the fact that it's a lot of work. It sounds like a lot of boring work.
Right?
A lot of dull details. I'm very eloquent at the end of the day.
I wake up in the second episode, and you carry us through the first, and then I go, all right, guys, we have our tiered support system. I think it's like $1, $3, $5, $7, $10 per month. So whatever you're comfortable with to help us with overhead costs. And that can be found at www.buymeacoffee.com/MM Mayhem. And you can do a one time if you want to and just buy us a book. Either way, thank you for listening.
Take care. We will talk to you next week.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you for listening to Mysteries, Monsters, and Mayhem.
Find us on Facebook and Instagram or at our website, mysteriesmonstersmayhem.com.
Please like, rate, and review, follow, and share wherever your favorite podcasts are downloaded.
Thank you for listening and supporting our podcast. We'll be back next week with more shenanigans.